Hello SLS 1101 students. This video is going to highlight your fourth assignment of the course, which is Module 2, Assignment 2. This is the What Surprised Me Most About How I Spent My Time discussion board. If you'll notice, I'm already starting off inside of your schedule of activities, which can be found here on your course page. The Module 2 only has 3 total study activities, Module 2 study activity 1 through 3, and these are the same 3 as your previous assignment, so you're probably already familiar with those. Having a look at where we're at in the class, this is the assignment that we're coming out of. This was our previous assignment, and we're moving into this week's assignment, which is Module 2, Assignment 2, post to the What Surprised Me Most About How I Spent My Time discussion board, and we'll walk through that in just one moment. Also, while I'm on this page, just keep in mind that any due dates you see as part of this walkthrough video may or may not apply to your class depending on the semester. For a more specific idea of when your assignments are due, be sure to check your personal schedule of activities for those specific dates as they pertain to your class. So that being said, let's go ahead and bounce into Module 2 so we can review the study activities a little bit and then jump right into your assessment for this week. Going over to your toolbar and clicking on Module 2 brings up those 2 folders which we're already familiar with. Scrolling down the page, the study activities are the resources you use to gain insight before you attempt your assignments, and of course your assessments is where you go to submit your work. Just to refresh our memories from last week's assignment, let's jump into those study activities that go along with Module 2 and have a look. And the first one's going to be Module 2 Study Activity 1, which is just simply reading your textbook. All the content from Module 2 comes from Chapter 2 of your Keys to the College Success textbook, so be sure to explore that. Module 2 Study Activity 2 comes from the online assessment or the textbook version of the values assessment. So there's 2 of these. I personally prefer this one over here, which is online. It gives you a list of different values and you pick the ones that most represent yourself, and then it emails you a real comprehensive report of what your values say about how well-rounded your priorities are. So I personally recommend this one. This is also an availability to you, which is in your textbook, page 30. Have a look at that. And then the last study activity for all of Module 2, which you may have watched as part of last week's assignment, is an excellent TED Talk regarding how to gain control over your free time. So definitely have a look at this one. Take notes as you jot it down. Anything that you want to include as you are defending your answers as part of your study activities and your assignments is a great idea. That way you have the elements that stuck out the most to you, and you can get your full credit on your assignments for linking the study activities, which we're looking at now. Linking these 3 study activities anywhere you can inside your assignments, because at the end of the day your instructors want to make sure that not only are you completing the work, but you're completing the work and proving that you have a growing understanding of the content developed in the study activities here. So be sure to write down anything from your textbook, anything that stood out as being important to you from your values assessment, and then of course any notes that you take of importance from the TED Talk mentioned below here. So have those handy whenever you jump into your Module 2 assignments. And let's have a look at those assignments now. Jumping back to the previous page, we just came from the study activities folder and we're transitioning into the assessments folder. Module 2 Assignment 1 was the previous assignment, but this week's assignment is directly correlated to that assignment. So be sure you have your results from last week's assignment handy whenever you scroll down the page to this week's assignment, which is Module 2 Assignment 2 What Surprised Me Most About How I Spent My Time. So let's read through these directions real carefully, and I'll try to point out some different insights that I can give you along the way. This assignment is a little bit different while I'm thinking about it. This assignment is a discussion post, so it's not something that you'll necessarily do on Microsoft Word or a word processor and upload. This is something that you'll respond to directly inside the discussion board by creating a new topic, and we'll have a look at that process together in just a moment as well. So instructions to evaluate how you spend your time and compare it to your values. So to prepare for this discussion board, review your values identified through either the Explore Values textbook assessment or the Personal Values assessment through the website. Those are your study activities. That was study activity 2. So be sure to have those results handy. And then this goes back to last week's review your time chart from SLS time tracking chart assignment from last week. So have those two things, your values and your time chart for last week. So here's your prompt. Time is one of your critical resources. Time, energy, money. We are used to thinking of money and energy as being things that we have to manage and budget, but rarely time. Begin thinking about time as a valuable but not an infinite resource. Remember that one way to tell what people really care about is to see how they spend their time, their energy, and their money. To complete this discussion board, follow the following 6 steps for full credit. List your top 3 values and a brief description of what those values mean to you from either the identified values assessment and the study activities. So list your top 3 values, and a brief description is about 1 to 2 sentences. So for full credit, list your 3 values, back them up with a brief description, 1 to 2 sentences, and then think about how to list that description to those study activities that dealt with the values. Full credit on that one. Identify your top 3 priorities using the strategies outlined in Chapter 2, so that goes back to the study activity Chapter 2 and that TED Talk video we just saw. So go through, identify those top 3 priorities, link it to something you've read in the textbook or from the TED Talk. So have those notes handy on what you took from the textbook and the TED Talk. Part 3 here, review your time chart and identify something about the way you spent your time that was a surprise to you. You should explain, which is describe with detail, why that was surprising to you. So this goes back to last week's assignment. Now that you've identified your values and your priorities, go back and see how you really spent your time and identify the one thing that stands out as just being surprising. It might be a good surprise. It might be a more disappointing surprise based on how you thought you were spending your time. But whatever that surprise is, be sure that when you explain it in detail, that you're including a full paragraph there. So if you're briefly explaining, you're in 1 to 2 sentences. If you're explaining in detail, like we are here in Part 3, you're looking at a full paragraph defending your answers and analyzing what those surprises were to you. Moving down to Part 4, compare how you spent your time with your values and your priorities that you identified as being most important to you from Part 1 and 2. Identify specific observations from reflection on the time spent pie chart from last week and the values and priorities. Use details, evidence from the study activities, and personal perspectives in order to make an informed evaluation of your values and your priorities and how they're connected. So in other words, here's the key point here. Would a stranger picking up and reading your time log from last week, would they be able to see clearly what is most important to you in your own personal values and priorities? Lastly here, how and why. So defend your answers with how and why. Part 5. Create 3 specific, realistic, measurable goals that you can do to improve your time management. So have them related to time management. You need 3 of these, and the most important part here is that they should reflect an understanding of the SMART goal setting system. If you're unfamiliar with that, it comes directly from Chapter 2 of your textbook. So be sure that your goals reflect the SMART goal mentality and have all 5 of those elements to get 5 points or full credit on this part of the assignment. And then lastly, this is a discussion post, so to get full credit here, simply reply to a peer, demonstrating the ability to analyze, synthesize others' works. You can ask meaningful, extended questions about what your peers were saying about their time chart, or you can go into a deeper discussion related to those elements as well. So keep all of that in mind. Once you finish this, you'll click on the title here. And what you'll need to do is create a thread. Put in your title and then your responses right into the message of the thread, and you'll notice that these start populating as students submit their discussion post assignments. If you're one of the first students to submit, you'll need to come back a day or 2 later to wrap up that last part of the assignment, which is responding to a peer. So have a look at this assignment. Create your new thread, label it, and then in the body of the message, you will complete your work. To make your assignment easy to grade and to be sure that you're getting full credit wherever possible, try to, going back down to your assignment now, try to identify each of the parts of your assignment so your teacher knows where to grade. So identify part 1 and then answer part 1. Part 2, identify, answer part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or not 6, but the first 5 parts there. That way your work is easy to read. Your instructors know where your answers are coming from. And then lastly, let's have a look at your rubric. I've already tried to highlight how to get full credit on each of the parts here, but be sure to go through and evaluate your rubric before you submit. The big difference in the class between developing and the expert level, so you get full credit, is having those full answers. So if it's a brief review, it's only 1 to 2 sentences. If you're explaining in detail, you're at 3 to 5 sentences, talking more along the lines of a paragraph. If you're at the expert level, you're referencing those elements from your study activities to prove that you are gaining that deeper understanding of the content presented in the class. That's more of the expert level versus the developing or emerging, where they're not referencing those study activities or the correlations between those in your work. So have a look, go through and read the rubric before you submit your work for full credit. If you have any questions about the grading scale, be sure to reach out to your instructors. And otherwise, have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you more next week. Thanks.